So, good evening. Welcome. Thanks for coming. This is full of people. I love it. Please put your phones in silence. There are people with the phones on, really. How unrespectful. Disrespectful. So welcome to this talk. The title is IoT Masterchef Cocinando for Hacking. My name is Meléndez. I am an engineer in embedded software systems in Alba Ingenieros. You have my Twitter account there to make me feel more important, to feed my ego and let me know that I have lots of followers. So that's me. This is Charmel Pisto, that's a name, and as I've said, I am engineer of IoT, and I am engineer of the drone Anthropos and the rover Texas Ranger, because everything's great if it's called that way. And I am also the author of the book Hacking with Drones. And if you brought it with you, I'd be delighted to sign them. So I've been in this event and a few more. And this is this sort of making me look important slide. So let's start with something strong. If I say ISIS and drones, people start going crazy, really. You have to start strong. The current events, the new concern of the Pentagon, the drones of ISIS, and we see two guys. These are the terrorist drones, not the ones that are published in Hackabay, but we see a drone here with tape, full of tape, and if you weren't aiming for something, to do something bad, it would be useful actually. Another news item that I like. This was shot down. Great job. You can say that you go home feeling you've earned your salary. This doesn't require any further explanation. So Defense Ministry, this came up yesterday in the panel discussion, alert of the threats of drones in the hands of foreign enemies. And ABC drones, a great threat, made up as toys. This sounds so menacing. The Merkel drone doesn't look cute. The drone could have a bomb inside, but doesn't it look cute? So I wanted to provide some context for this talk. The drones as a threat. They are actually flying computers. IoT, Internet of Things, above your head. Well, that's what we used to call it, but we're actually talking about small computers, embedded systems, that's all. Specific payment card or chargers, you can make it transport anything. They say a new drone has come up from the research and development department of the company Superstar that carries something in the storage part. Well, do I do research and development if I put something in the back of my car that nobody had put in before? So I'm doing research and development, yeah. So the sector, the industry goes crazy. Drones, how can we detect them, chase them, control them, and throw them away, humiliate them, and stamp them out? And one of the ways is detecting them through normal cameras or thermal cameras or infrared, and that can give you the physical shape of the machine based on the heat produced by the engines and the electronics, but mainly the engines and the shape that they have inside of the camera. Well, four hot points in the shape of a square, that's probably not a bird. People also say, well, depending on how it rings, it could be one or the other, the audio footprint. But above all, and first of all, the signals that it conveys to the pilot, to the drone, and the control and telemetry. Okay, this drone of this brand has a certain signature, and it conveys signals that behave in a very specific way, and there have been even studies that focus on an external stimulus. For instance, if I believe that I'm being spied on with drones at home, what I do is I switch on and off the light of my home so that the bitrate changes in the drone image. That's very weird, but there's actually an article published about this. But above all, it's about the signature of the radio signal in each one of the machines. This one I find particularly funny. They say, do not worry, with my app, I've designed an app, and you can install that, and if you see a drone, you do that, and the app tells you which is the drone, what's the mission, etc., because this is becoming trendier, and it seems to be heading for drones to be flying around the city. So with this application, you'll be able to check with each drone in real time whether it is legal, illegal, and what's the mission. But we're going to force everybody to install this little program in their own drone so that they voluntarily provide this information about their intentions. I mean, that one was smart. Really smart. Well, you can draw your own conclusions. So what actions? Well, we have already detected a drone, and we have it sort of at the aiming screen, and this weird noises. You do the jamming of the radio, you issue a greater power. It's about I'm stronger than you, yeah. That's all. So I speak louder than you, and therefore your drone cannot listen to you. Something more sophisticated is the EMP, the electromagnetic pulse. And I found out what that was playing StarCraft, and a while ago, certainly. And it's about launching an electromagnetic pulse that sort of melts the electronic, but the more standard procedure is radio jamming. And I find this appealing because they talk about the gold fever, and I am Joey, and I'm here with my Wi-Fi jacker. This came up in the DEF CON, this type of device, in last year's. Which is drones gone mad. We go crazy with this anti-drone system. They can go to 3,000 euros to 10,000, and you need a guy to be holding that rifle. But this is really my favorite. This is from, I think, a British brand. Well, it's part of the same team, the whole thing. And it's about radar, thermographic cameras, jammers, protocol attacks. So the whole catalog for just 1 million euros. And you say to yourself, it's going to be very bad if with 1 million euros. You cannot stop the drones. And the question is, how many drones can I buy myself with €1 million? So depending on the model, for 14,500 drones. So can this machine intercept those 14,000 drones? Maybe that's not how you should compute these figures. You just should throw in money and that's it. And because the only thing that matters is stopping them. That's another option I love. And the issue is whether this drone is the appropriate size. What if it's not? Where do you get it from? How do you hold it? And then my drone is bigger than yours. We were saying my radio is bigger than yours, and now my drone is bigger than yours. It's all about size, really. This shouldn't necessarily be called countermeasures, but these are just palliative measures if frequency starts being... I'm not going to talk a lot about this live because my bosses are here and they are people in telecommunications and they might beat me up afterwards. But the idea is to use widened spectrum. That is to use a very wide range of wavelengths so that if one fails, you have a very ample base. The next one is obviously to use a frequency that the jammer is not prepared for. This is like the cat and the mice. So if you have this, if this is your frequency range, you'll use something else. Then your jammer is no good. And then robust protocols. I remember in Mahanel, I don't know if they're around here. If you're here, the one who did an authentication attack to the drone Wi-Fi, and I thought I'd do my own Wi-Fi protocol with casinos. And casinos. In the DEF CON of last year, and I'll show you what it is about later on. They said, we know all this. We know all this. But let's do a drone that goes through 3G and 4G. Why? Because it's illegal to do jamming. Okay. They cannot do jamming to me because it's illegal. I don't know what could go wrong with that. Jammers do not claim. This is the slide that I picked up from the DEFCON, and they were saying, that's what they were saying. It is illegal. So if they are illegal, and some anti-drone systems use 3G, 4G to control them. So either you jam yourself in the drone or what? So to get more specific and more technical, in RootedCon 2013, in fact it was my first talk, I presented the Atropos drone, which is it's a drone, it's still there. I didn't kill it off yet. It's an Atropos drone, and it's based on a Wi-Fi router. The stability control is through a C program. I'm sorry. That runs on the router, and it reads the data of the sensors that were just the commands of the Wii. Because at that time you couldn't buy sensors that easily, or they were incredibly expensive. So it was better to use the commands of the Wii. If you want to see the talk, you just have to go to the web of Rooted. It was controlled to HTML5 and it was a radio Wi-Fi, and I did a POC on beacons that I will explain more about. What next? In the face of this, I said to myself, well, I have to do something. And then I remember this scene in Star Wars, when seeing Star Wars was not about a reason to cry, and the commander tells that about that there are 30 ships, but they're so small that they escape our turbo laser. I've named this interceptor in just a few hours ago. I'm gonna call it interceptor or interceptor, depending on which region I talk. So this is the drone made with Chinese stocks, because and they say the cover of the drone are so cheap. You get one in a Chinese store and that's it. And I say yes, but then nobody will believe that I've done it. But with this Chinese stick, it's obvious that I've done it. And this is a Bokor plague, the smallest Linus plague that exists. It has 4 engines. This has no controllers, no triphasic engines, just your standard engines that are not super efficient now. What's the leitmotif of this project? Minimum size, obviously, because it's harder to detect with all of these thermographic cameras. Minimum weight. As we lower parameters, the money decreases, and that means I can do more. I can launch a whole squadron against you. And also minimum components on board, minimum complexity in terms of hardware. And then I wanted everything. I wanted it to have everything. It should also all hack. And this is where I come here to complain and to tell you about my sorrowful story, how this project went, because that's why we're cooking a drone. The first thing was to choose a sensor or a IMU that should give you the attitude data. These are sensors that detect movement so that the drone can react in consequence to be stable. So I thought, well, I go to AliExpress. That's always a possibility. And in these Chinese stores you can find plenty of these boards. The first one that struck me was MPU 9250, gyroscope, accelerometer, magnetometer, barometer. So great. And then I asked for the smallest board, which until 5 minutes ago it was Bokor 2. But until just recently, it is this board, which is just a bit bigger than a euro coin, and it has Wi-Fi and Linux, and the guy has inspired himself in the Wi-Fi router. And the black is the system that has Wi-Fi, Linux, and the operating system, of course, the CPU. And behind that you have the memory and the flash. And this is the marketing of those of us who like this sort of things. Look at everything you can do. has I to C, USB, 3 serial ports, many things to play with. Here you have the specifications in the MediaTek. It's a MediaTek 7628, 580 megahertz. We want a 3U ART. This is the normal Linux console. PWM that has 4 channels, and I explain that now. PWM, for those of you who do not know, it's a signal, a digital signal that is sent in intervals, up, down, up, down. It's just a square signal. And the longer it stays up, more will the engine turn. So when the pin is up, I can change that to the time that the pin stays up to change speed. But then the party starts, the pakori comes in, and the first thing I see is that the guy who has designed it, another Chinese guy, says that the Ralink driver, because they weren't yet part of MediaTek, it is their own, it is private, and it doesn't meet the standard, but I have a perfect SDK to develop my stuff. And I say, okay, well, pay me if you want me to develop in your great SDK. An image of OpenWRT, but it's not in the official branch. You have to download it from somewhere else, and there's a little program there to change the pins, and then there's a device tree that I will explain in more detail. I will tell you what it's about. So I couldn't believe that, because it was really still half-cooked. But still more strange. Software, I take a look at the drivers of these sensors, because the MPU 2.5 and the other ones, yeah, this is a cheap. Maybe your mobile has it. This is just completely standard. But you go there, and then first of all, for makers, we have Intel that says, no problem, I have a library that I've done it on my own from scratch to make your life easier. What's your library like then? Do you have an Edison? No. Do you have a Raspberry? No. Well, get lost. Well, if you go to the source code and you, at least in that version from the library, I don't know how that is now, but in the version of the library, you have to touch the source code and to say, I'm a friend, I'm just going to use that. But they say, it doesn't say Edison here. And also, it came with presence, Python, Nodex, but you have to deactivate all of that, because you don't want to have 16 megas in something like that is a luxury. Normal routers have 4. And then, because we need this to be quite sort of in real time in an operating system which has not been designed for real time, I do my own scheduling. And I say, well, I'm going to forget about the library, because they have to have a driver. Do not tell me that it doesn't have a driver. I'm going to do it properly, like a pro. So I go to Android. And yes, Android has drivers, but they've also done sort of on their own, as they saw fit. And the kernel, well, on its own. And the kernel, of course, are, I don't know, this is 3-year-old. So easy. Let's not overdo it with functionalities. It turns out that the kernel is the most current one. The most current one didn't even have support for that chip specifically, so you have to say no, it's another one. So you can see here in the well tree, when you're going to compile in OpenWRT, when you do kernel minu-config, you get the kernel controllers, everything that the normal kernel should have. You activate the driver of I2C, the controller of the I2C of the specific hardware for your board, for your chipset, and then you say there is an invent here, MPU65, but it's not the same one. Okay, but let's be nice to each other. If you add a few defines, then you can work.
So what happens afterwards, you need to modify the device tree, which is a hardware description file, independent of the operating system and the platform, that describes which hardware your board has. For example, if you're looking for mobile device trees, every mobile has its device tree. So this one has this or that sensor. In that description, it tells you, as you may see here, within the I2C section, you have the sensor, and within I2C, you have address 69, registry 69. In hexadecimal, you tell it that is compatible with InvenSense MPU. And then you need to define an interruption pin code. So I'm like, okay, look at the board. So there's nothing saying interruption here. Nothing at all. Okay. I look at the chip data feed, and they didn't put it through a pin. You need to weld it on the actual leg of the sensor, not on the board. So despite that obstacle, I say, okay, I'm going to have these interruption pings so that the driver knows where you're at. And then you have a prepared reading. You lift that ping and you read it, and the driver does all that. So you need to state all those things in this file. The other things, like hacker-like, are with the orientation matrix. If you have set up the sensor on the one way or the other for it to fit well, to fit perfectly, so that it turns like this and not like that, basically. So I'm like, oh great, it's good to go. So is the PONED. I get the drivers to compile, I get them from another kernel, and then you go to read them, to read all data, and it goes like black, and then it continues. Okay, so in that black, the drum does black as well, and it can't afford the luxury of these going bust, of these working pretty much always, but not always. So if that IIQ is done to lower the CPU consumption, only with the IIQ it would consume between 2 and 9% of the CPU, so that's quite an intensive usage. And I just thought that was weird. And someone was saying, if you have read the slides, well, can you use I2C with software? Just like what I did with that Atropos when I didn't have the real I2C. So you can get those two pins, say that that's not an I2C, and then say that it's an I2C emulated. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? So here's the device tree, and there are full talks on the device tree, just like no JSON, and the format is pretty open, as you may have seen. Depending on the driver, it's like the parameters you put on the driver when it comes to start. And that depends on the driver. Hey, I need a parameter called this or that. Okay, thank you. It's in the source code. You can look at it, of course. So after all of this, you get the Voco 2, you get support for LEDI to now unifying OpenWRT. The device tree is isn't, so I ignore completely the MPU and go to other solutions that integrate the filter even, so that the gyroscope and the magnetometer and another device works. So the PWM has 4 channels per hardware, but only 2 of them are active because the guy who worked on the board made a generic device tree, and the person may want these pins in this configuration, and the chip may use them differently. Fair enough, why not? Good luck with that. But you need to disable the UART too, and some of them match the UART2, so need to disable 2 and enable another 2. In the vote course, someone asks this guy, hey, you know, I want you to disable the 4 2RMs. Okay, so you need to disable and enable all this. And he's like, what? Look at that face. And this is the last post of the thread. So what do we actually need to do here? We need to look at how the device tree works. The device tree works by defining some sort of groups or SMEs, and I give them a meaning. So that's like a cross matrix. So these groups of pins is associated to this functionality. So the pins of the UR2 have the name UR2 in the function UR2. It looks obvious, doesn't it? Then we have other pins, and PWM0, which is a PWM0, then the one which is 1, and they all have the name and the function. But I do need to disable the function of UART and say that it's PWM. I need to find a whole new set of pins, including the 3, 0, 1, and the other 2, which are the UART. So the people who did this call those pins UART2, but they could be PWM even though they're called UART2. And you're like, what the fuck? So what you need to do, and this goes through layers. First of all, you have the chip, and then you have the board. So you need to find them. And then in the code, this is managed by the kernel itself, and this is where you define the functions. You have the group PWM1, and this may have all these functions and so on. And we're interested in this one in particular, for the UR2, but I want in PWM. So I don't have the UR, but I have the 2 PWMs, and we need to go to the data sheet to see this. And here we have the same thing as in the code. But it states that the UR2 pin may have GPOs, PWM, or EMC. And this picture kind of looks that I'm doing something sensible. This is the company workshop. We're trying the power stage of the drone, which is a MOSFET. Works as a power stage for the engines. It goes from the PWM, it goes to the MOSFET. It has a diode and a condensator, so that this doesn't crash or it doesn't set itself on fire. And we were doing debugging with the debugger, also called oscilloscope. And here is see the PWM, and you're like, well, but it looks like the heart rate of someone who's dying. And when you stop giving power to the engine becomes a power generator, and that's the return power. So we need to control those things so that it doesn't work like crap. And then we get to the last stage, the tuning of the PID, the pinking of the PID. And this seems silly, but it's the most reliable way of adapting it. When you buy a drone, it's already tuned up, but they don't tell you how they did it in the factory, and you only need to do it once. So here you block the drone in all the axes except for one, and you test that one. I'm not going to give you too many details, but the PID virtually is a control algorithm, industrial, where you have a reading, and you read your -1 degrees of inclination want to be a 0. So this algorithm applies the exact strength to the engines to get to 0 without going too far. It's like the cruise control of a car, but ×3 for each axis, like this, like this, and like this. Okay, so interceptor as a hacking tool that I implemented in this drone. So this is a control and telemetry, but through Wi-Fi. It has an extension of the protocol I designed for the Atropos. It's a beacons-based protocol with beacons frames for Wi-Fi announcing a network that doesn't exist in the payload of beacon. And here I send the control data. So this drone also gives you back data. And if you see the mobile, this is working. I haven't looked at it, but you can see that you have the pilot interceptor of SSIDs, and those networks do not exist. They're exchanging data through the payload of the beacons. And what I have put there, which I'm going to show you, it's like, okay, I want to do this, but just with a Wi-Fi adapter. I want to have more adapters, they don't fit. So what do? I go through all the channels, just in case I want to run a tool such as Bully for Wi-Fi audit, or Riva, one of those things. So I need a monitor mode interface that I use for drone control, and as well as to launch those tools. So if I'm broadcasting on channel, I'm blocked there. So I avail of the overlapping of channels, say, with the remote control. Okay, I want to change the channel. And the drone gets that and said, okay, so if I'm in 13, I'll go to 12. And so on until I get to a channel I want. That is done with AES coding or encrypting to protect the packages. And well,
A ver. Le tendré que cambiar la batería por...
okay, I need to change the battery because I've been charging for an hour. And here you may see the control, that's the website. You can see it here. And this is served by the PC. The PC has a Wi-Fi network, and the beacons go from this USB control. Even though it looks like an expensive emitter, it's a USB command, a USB remote control. It could be like a PlayStation control. It works with the joystick kernel mode. It reads from there, and it converts that into beacon frames, the whole movement of the different levers. And then on the way back, since the monitor is injecting, if it injected the 8-track mode, it also does it in monitor mode to capture packages from the drone. That is doing the same. The drone is giving back the telemetry. If I move it, and it gives me telemetry, the battery voltage. It looks like it's kind of working okay. Okay, so this works with the US sockets. It goes from the PC server to navigate to the browser. You get the beacon frames of the drone, and then they go to the US sockets that are represented in JSON on the interface. So if I want to switch the channel, let's do a test here. And I may say, okay, this is in monitor mode plus client mode. I have an access point here, which is my home, and both the drone, which is in client mode, and we also have the monitor mode. So I ask it to go to normal monitor mode to switch the channel. Otherwise I'm blocked in the client mode channel. So now I can switch the channel. So here's beginning to launch the pulley to different SSIDs. Okay.
¿Se le acabó la batería ya o qué?
Has it run out of battery already? Let me check.
Le voy a dar un... que lleva mucho rato. A ver si no se la cambio. Si tenéis preguntas...
So if you have any questions, we may begin. If you'll agree, so that we gain some time while I change this battery.
Gracias, gracias. Luego me tendréis que aplaudir otra vez cuando...
Thank you. You need to give me another round of applause later when I finish properly. So are there any questions? Hello. First of all, congratulations. And I actually have two short questions. First of all, have you thought about selling it through crowdfunding, Kickstarter, or whatever you wish? Please do sell it. And secondly, I found it remarkable that you trick the beacon frames. I guess it's quite easy to hack that drone, because if we find the SSID of the two Wi-Fis you're using, we could inject packages very easily, right? Well, there are actually two ways, and I'm going to say this before I do the demo, which is a bit dangerous. Please, this is an expensive screen. Let's not damage it. And we know that the Wi-Fi is hackable. I'll never deny that. But there are different mitigation measures. One of them is ciphering. Another one is the message integrity. I do know that you may inject packages. And my proposal is now been developed. The final proposal is something we're already doing, is to have a sequence control. If you inject oil packages, you know, it's not that easy. Please do not do it. But that's the way it is. We need to check the integrity as well as the sequence number, and discard the others. And this also encrypted with AES. And the code changes at every restart. Is exchanged by the normal network. In each flight, the keyword changes, because if you detect my traffic, you may get my keyword. So it goes on those lines. However, the aim is to use something different than Wi-Fi, and I'll leave it there for other talks, because this is to be continued. So I'm going to do the demo. Are there any other questions meanwhile? This is a good question, by the way. And if you manage to answer it, if you get a better question, I'll give you a book for free. I'm going to give a book for free to the best question. There's another question over there. Please raise your hand. Hello. Hi. So from the hardware perspective, I think it's like suicide to use brush engines instead of using brushless. Is it just to make the drone cooler? Where are you, by the way? I'd like to look at you in the eye. Well, you know, too wrong there, because the brusher engines are crap for drones, but they're great for tiny drones. The triphasic engines with their controller have a tiny size, and they're all brushed. Well, please look at Banggood AliExpress, because in that size you have brushless that are very thin with less interference. I don't know the cost though. These ones came in a truck. It's like three euros per engine. Well, it's not that cheap. Plus the ECC. Yeah, you pay that on the side. But I do like your idea. Thank you. However, if I crash the minimum cost, it doesn't really matter. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's check. I just finished pimping this morning at 2 a.m. Okay, let's check how this works. And this could be actually very short, so please pay attention. If you want to take a picture, please do it now, otherwise it might be too late. Oh. Thank you very much. Let's try again if you don't mind. You know, I'm kind of liking it. Oh. I can't believe I'm so clumsy. Okay, one more and we're done. In fact, this doesn't come up in the slides. You can come close and look at it, but this sensor does not allow for filter configuration, so you need to do a physical filter, which is to get two thermoretractile bands and put a little coin there, and that does a filter to cut the high frequencies of the engines, because otherwise this would never fly. Oh, there it goes. Wow. Okay, it's been parked now. thank you very much. And I don't know whether we still have some time. So one last question. But you've all seen that with the brushless anyway. Well, thank you very much, David. Well, thank you. Oh, by the way, I do have one very last slide. Okay. Now we're all getting anxious. Let's remember there is beer free from 8 until 10. So I would like to thank these people who are actually bosses. Thank you very much. Thank you.